let's take a sneak peek of some upcoming modeling capabilities. Now keep in mind, it is subject to change, but let's take a look at some exciting things we're working on. Let's start off with Model Pivot with this demo of this upcoming experience. If I go to the model view, I am able to see all of my tables and relationships in my diagram. I could also see this helpful information in the data pane. But now, if I want to get a more full view of all the semantic objects in my model, I could see it in the model pivot as well. Here, I can see all of the roles, all of the relationships, all of the perspectives, and all of the measures, even if they're in different tables. Now, we even could see calculation groups listed. Not only can you see these calculation groups, but we can also, for the first time in desktop, see the calculation items. And if I click on it, I can actually edit it here right in desktop. So I can edit and create calculation groups all within desktop. Now that we've seen Model Pivot, including calculation groups in desktop, let's now take a look at the next exciting new capability, which is DAX Query Editor, which will help make debugging and writing DAX easier. Here I am in Power BI Desktop, and I notice a fourth view here on my navigator, which is the DAX Query view. In the DAX Query view, I can write any DAX query on this model and run it right here in desktop. I have a measure showing my profit margin by fiscal year. If I hit run, I will be able to see the results directly here in the DAX Query Editor, and I'm able to look at my measure, and I can hover over and see the DAX expression right here in context with the DAX Query view. This helps a lot with scenarios where you're working on a measure that references another measure. You no longer need to context switch and click on that measure to see the expression. You can see it simply in your measure definition. If you see, this example measure that I'm showing here actually refers not only to one other measure, but two other measures. And so it could be helpful to be able to see all of these measure definitions all within the same place. So this can be done by clicking the light bulb. I can define this measure and expand references. Now I can see multiple DAX expressions listed here, profit margin, and all measures down to data columns used to generate that measure. Not only can you see it here, but you can make changes right here, and I can even edit multiple measures at once. This really simplifies the process of not only understanding all the measures in my model, but also being able to directly change them while looking at all of the similar related measures. So here I will multiply my costs by 2, and then maybe sell everything at triple the price and see how this will affect my gross margins. So I run this, and now you see that my profit margin has now gone up to 40%. Now these changes are all within the single DAX query view. Going back to visuals, you see that the old value is still 11%, but this DAX query view is pretty smart and knows I have these measures in my model, so it gives me an inline prompt to save it back. So I can quickly save these changes I made to these two measures back to my model, still all within the context of what I was doing and what I was editing. So going back to my report view, I now see my model changes in my report view as well. This is a huge productivity boost, allowing several changes at once, and when it is ready, you can save to model and see the changes in your report. Now in this example, there were only 4 measure definitions, but some models may have hundreds or even thousands of measures. In these cases, seeing all of them to do things like global find and replace can be really helpful. This can be done in the data pane. I right-click and select Quick Measures, which will define all of the measures in the model. So now you can scroll and see all the measures in the model. And you can do so many great things with being able to see all of these measures in the model, such as find, you can do replace, you could do other text editor things, even like zoom in and zoom out. Not only do you see all these measure definitions and you have that option to save any changes back to the model, but you also have a query with this. So you can run this and see all the measures and tailor to what exactly you need, such as you might want to add a group by column, you might want to remove measures. Whatever you need to do, we already have this in place and ready for you to do with the option to quickly and easily see all of these measures in the model. Another thing these quick queries can do, I can actually go over to a new page and I can define a single measure. Let's take a look at this with discount. Show me for this measure alone, and I will run it, and I have the summarization columns here. I can add a group by column with full IntelliSense to help me define my measures and run it right here and see the results directly. This isn't only for measures. I can also use this on any data table. Like here is my customer table. I right click and I have a quick query here to get the top 100 rows, which this is really helpful for direct query scenarios where you don't have that data view to help you understand what your data looks like. And then you could even go down to an individual column. So if you want to see what countries are in this model, I have a quick create for that where I can do distinct values. Running this, you can see all of this generated for you directly in the DAX editor. Now, another thing is that a lot of DAX queries are actually generated by report visuals. So sometimes it's helpful to intercept DAX written for report visuals for debugging purposes. These type of scenarios are also addressed by the DAX query view. Many advanced users will go to Performance Analyzer and copy the query out of there, but now we make it just as easy with Quick Query. You can just right-click any visual, go to Inspect Visual, and now that DAX query is over in the DAX query view, and you can now take whatever steps you need on this report measure. Not only will it do this, but you also can have filters be brought in with you. So you can inspect it and it brings the filter as well with you to see how it is applied to the visual. All of this can be analyzed in the DAX Query Editor. And finally, we can also get down to an individual data point and inspect just that data point to see the query behind it. I was able to inspect this individual data point. I was able to inspect an entire visual and understand how filters apply to my DAX. This is all a huge productivity boost, helping me debug and better understand my DAX. But not only can DAX Editor help with debugging, but it could also help with writing DAX using Copilot in Power BI. Let's take a look of what it looks like to have it help me write DAX as well. Here, I can say, show me profit margin % by fiscal year, and it generates the query for me. Not only that, but it's conversational, so it already suggests another prompt and another query. So I already did it by year. Maybe it thinks I want to see it by quarter as well. And it does this all for me. It took my instructions in English and then translated it to DAX and eagerly suggested additional helpful measures I could define. This is all extremely useful, but some people prefer to not speak in English. Like I know many of you might prefer to speak in Dutch. Well, Copilot is not limited to only helping write DAX with English. You can also speak to it directly in any language you are comfortable with. So in this case, why don't we try this out using a Dutch prompt instead to see if Copilot can understand what I write in Dutch and help me write DAX. So here I will go to a new tab and I will give a prompt in Dutch. So as you see, it took that prompt without any problem and wrote a query based on what I had written in Dutch. And not only will it do it for the first query, but it will be continually prompting in Dutch. Since it saw I was speaking to it in Dutch, it thought maybe I was interested in only the customers in Amsterdam. So that is the next step. It will continue to provide prompts and narrow further. It is chatty and keen to have a conversation with you and help you write the DAX that you need. Now you've seen sneak peeks of 2 new exciting capabilities in the modeling space for Power BI, as well as a demo of exciting new capabilities that we recently introduced. Thank you all so much for taking the time.